They called it discipline. But for the young men forced into Rome's legions, it was something far darker. Imagine being beaten into the dirt for stumbling, starved until your bones ached, marched until your feet bled. To the Romans, this was strength. But hidden within those brutal routines were whispers, men treated differently, not just for their weakness, but for their origins, their skin, their name. The question wasn't just whether you could survive the training. It was whether you were even allowed to. And for one recruit, the line between soldier and victim was never meant to be crossed. Marcus was 17 when the recruiters came. He wasn't Roman by blood. He was from Nubia, taken after Rome's conquest in Africa. To the empire, he was useful muscle, nothing more. His mother begged him not to go, but refusing meant punishment for his entire village. So he marched away, carrying nothing but the promise of survival. Life before the army was simple. He herded goats, carved wood, and dreamed of freedom. But Rome had other plans. The training camp was a world of stone walls, iron discipline, and ruthless instructors. The first days shattered illusions quickly, running miles with sacks of sand, carrying logs heavier than 2 men, fighting until you collapsed. Still Marcus endured. His frame was strong, his spirit unbroken. Yet even in his strength, he noticed a difference. Roman-born recruits received encouragement when they stumbled. He received blows. When others were given water, his canteen stayed dry. The message was clear. You are here to suffer, not to belong. But Marcus had no choice. Every bruise was a reminder. If he failed, his people would suffer. Survival meant more than finishing the drills. It meant enduring the unspoken injustice buried deep within the empire's iron discipline. What Marcus didn't know was that his greatest test wasn't the training itself. It was the hatred of the men around him. The camp broke men. Each day began before sunrise, the sound of horns echoing over the hills. They marched for miles in full armor, trained with wooden swords until their hands split open, and built fortifications under the blistering sun. For Romans, this was honor. For Marcus, it was a sentence. His body hardened quickly, but the prejudice burned deeper than any ache in his muscles. When he outperformed others in sparring, instructors accused him of cheating. When he carried heavier loads, they called him a beast instead of a soldier. Fellow recruits whispered about his dark skin, mocking him, trying to break his spirit. The injustice grew sharper one afternoon during punishment drills. A Roman-born recruit had collapsed, unable to carry his shield. The commander looked to Marcus. Without hesitation, he ordered him to carry both shields for the rest of the march. "The foreigner can bear it," he sneered. The weight crushed Marcus's shoulders, his knees buckling with every step. The Romans laughed, but Marcus clenched his jaw, refusing to fall. Days blurred into weeks, each one more punishing. Whispers of desertion filled the camp, but Marcus knew escape wasn't an option. His people's safety depended on his endurance. Still, the constant isolation began to eat at him, while others bonded over shared pain. He slept alone, an outsider in every sense. The breaking point came during weapons training. Paired with a Roman-born recruit who despised him, Marcus found himself beaten mercilessly, the wooden sword striking not just with force but with intent. Blood ran from his mouth, his vision swam. Yet the instructor didn't stop it. He watched in silence, a cruel smirk flickering across his face. Marcus realized then that the brutality wasn't just training. It was targeted, a reminder that he was less than human in their eyes. But instead of surrendering, something inside him hardened. He began to endure not just for himself, but as silent defiance. Every lash, every insult became fuel. He would survive, not because Rome wanted him to, but because they didn't. What none of them knew was that the test was reaching its peak, and Marcus's survival would come at a cost no one expected. The final trial arrived at dawn, a forced march across jagged terrain, armor strapped tight, supplies heavy. Many collapsed along the way. Marcus kept moving, each step carving fire into his legs. The weight of injustice pressed heavier than the armor, but he refused to bow. Hours passed. His vision blurred. His skin blistered under the relentless sun. Then came the command: construct a fortification before nightfall. Exhausted men collapsed in heaps, but Marcus lifted stones, his hands bleeding raw. Each block laid was a declaration. I will not be broken. By dusk, the fort stood, and the men staggered in exhaustion. Marcus collapsed, body trembling, chest heaving. Yet he had endured. He had proven strength not just of muscle, but of will. But instead of recognition, the commander sneered. You survived because you're not like us. You are a beast, not a soldier. The words cut deeper than any blade. Around him, recruits looked away, unwilling to acknowledge his suffering. At that moment, Marcus faced a cruel truth. Survival in Rome's army wasn't about skill or discipline. It was about status, blood, and the color of your skin. He had given everything, yet to them, he would always remain less than human. Still, Marcus lifted his head. His body was broken, but his spirit was not. I am still here, his eyes seemed to say. Against hatred, against brutality, against an empire itself. He had endured, and that endurance became his act of rebellion. Marcus went on to serve in the legions, fighting in battles across foreign lands. He carried the same strength that had seen him through training, but the memory of those early days never left him. The scars on his back were not just from whips or weapons. They were reminders of an empire built on exploitation, division, and the silencing of anyone deemed other. For Rome, his survival proved their system worked. But for Marcus, it proved something deeper, that resilience could outlast hatred. He never received honor, never statues or songs. Yet his endurance carried a truth that Rome could never erase. Even in the face of prejudice, dignity can survive. And centuries later, the story still echoes, because the world has changed, but the injustice hasn't disappeared. From ancient camps to modern cities, people still endure brutality not for what they've done, but for who they are. The question remains, how many Marcuses walk among us today, surviving in silence, carrying burdens no one else sees? The Roman Empire fell, but the lesson it left behind, that survival is often demanded most from those society chooses to mistreat, still speaks loudly. So when you hear stories of injustice today, remember Marcus. Remember that survival isn't just about strength. It's about courage in the face of cruelty, dignity in the shadow of hate. And ask yourself, what side of history are you standing on?